Isaac Presley, star of Disney's Stuck in the Middle, Netflix's Fuller House, and Amazon Prime's One Nation Under God, is a veteran actor at the age of 22. Starting his career at age 5 on Nickelodeon's Yo Gabba Gabba, he faced early pressures to support his family. Struggling with trauma and an inability to express his emotions, Presley turned to drugs and alcohol in his teens, with his substance use escalating during the pandemic. After a 2023 arrest on a small charge, he realized the need for change. In this episode of Addiction Talk, Presley discusses childhood stardom, addiction, and how he's turned his life around today. Addiction Talk starts now. Welcome to Addiction Talk, Isaac. We are really blessed to be able to share your story. I mean, as someone who's 22, many of us have seen you as a childhood actor, and to be able to hear from you today and just learn about your story is, I know, going to touch so many lives. So where are you joining us from tonight?
I'm in Los Angeles, and thank you guys so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, one of the things I always like to start out with is not all celebrities share their story. But what I love about you, Isaac, is you've been open. You were like, this has been my journey. I want to talk more about it. What led you early on to say, I'm going to be an open book. I'm going to share my addiction story. I'm going to be real about what I've been through in my life?
Yeah, you know what? I think I've never considered myself a role model, and I certainly do not ask people to follow my steps in life because I'm only 22 and I'm figuring it out as I go along every day. But I think we as people have an opportunity to help one another on a day-to-day basis. And the worst thing that we can do to other humans is withhold information and withhold wisdom. Because at the end of the day, what we take to our grave is not the money and the things that we buy throughout our lives, but it's all this information and people that we meet and the experiences that we pass on to others. And I think as I started to, even when I was bad and very low, I think there was many nights of connecting with other people and realizing that there is a sense of security in knowing that you're not the only one that's dealt with the things you've dealt with. It doesn't necessarily make it better. It just feels safe. It feels communal. It feels relatable. So I think from that, like throughout time, I think I've realized that if my pain and my experiences and things I've dealt with could offer some sort of guidance or help to young people or older people or really whoever can gain value from what I have to say, I think I have a right to, and I should. I think I have a duty to.
Now, as we go through your story tonight, and I'm going to take us all the way back from the beginning, is it painful to talk about at this point, or are you at a point where it's almost like you've overcome this?
Yeah, I think I actually today posted a video on my socials and I said healing isn't linear.
Mm.
There's days that are bad and there's days that are good, and there's some wounds that cut deeper than others. And I don't know. I wouldn't say I've achieved like full healing. I'm still figuring stuff out, but I would say like there's a part of me that every time I talk about it, I take away the power that it's had over me in the past. And it's almost like this release of like pressure and like the hold that it has of like choking me almost. It's like loosening its grip every time I get to talk about it, and know that, being here with you today, like being able to share it with other people and talk to people, it's almost like I'm taking control of the thing that once had control over me and using it in a positive way to help others.
Wow. I think what just resonated with me when you said it's like taking something that had a chokehold on you. And I know a lot of people who are going through addiction, who even may be watching this, who are struggling, they can relate to that feeling, a feeling like something else has control over your life. But every time you get up and you tell your story, or you come on a platform like Addiction Talk, you're able to release that. And it's like you're taking back your power. And I think
Right.
that's so powerful for people to be able to hear, because so many people feel shamed by
Of
what
course.
they went through. But you have taken it and said, I feel empowered every time I can share it. Was that off the bat, or did you get to a place where you
No,
were okay
definitely.
and didn't worry about what people thought?
Yeah, definitely felt embarrassed at first. Like being the 22-year-old sober guy definitely was a little bit shameful at first. But as time's gone on, I'm proud. I'm proud that I'm the guy standing in the room that's like, I'm not having a drink because I choose to not have a drink. There was once a time that I was having a drink and I didn't get the choice. My brain was going to do it kind of regardless. It was programmed. It was immediate. And every time I say no to something, or every time I'm in those settings and where I used to stay up for 2 to 3 days at a time, and I'm going home at 1, and I'm like, wow, late night tonight, back at 1 a.m., going to sleep, waking up the next morning, feeling good. I can sleep off 4 or 5 hours, and because I'm young and I'm healthy, I feel good and I can operate, and it feels great. It feels so special that when I get to say to someone like I'm sober, it's almost like me saying I conquered something that once owned me,
Mm.
and I feel pride. And if someone has something negative to say about it, I don't really mind. It's not their journey, it's mine, and my opinion's the only thing that matters to myself.
That's huge, especially for someone who's in the limelight and you have to experience pressures all the time of being in the limelight and having to hear what people say. I think that's so powerful that you've been able to say, what I think about me is most important. And what I think about me is I'm doing well. I've made a conscious choice and I'm living a new life. So that has to feel good. I imagine
Feels
waking
great.
up every day feeling that. So let's go back.
Yeah.
We remember you, Yo Gabba Gabba, just all of the different
Sure.
characters you've played. You started in this industry when you were 5. Many people are wondering, at 5 years old, how did you know you wanted to do this? Was this something you chose to do? Or was this something like your parents are like, he's talented, he needs to be an actor?
Yeah, my dad raised me as a single parent, and I have no brothers and sisters. So my dad was in the industry, and he accomplished a lot of great things. Never, fortunately, was in an era that the things that he was involved in just didn't have the sort of viewership that it would today, or like ability to garner a following. No social media, no nothing. So extremely talented man, but just never quite got to that breakthrough star point. So I think when my dad had me, he knew that he had all this information from years of a career, and that there would be no one else to tell him how to raise his kid, because it was just him and I. And he would put everything he had spent his whole life learning into me, which was the arts. Um, and yeah, I think at the end of the day, like, you don't really know what you want at 5. You're 5. I wanted to be a superhero more than likely. If I had a little job certificate back then that I could have filled out of like dream jobs, it would have been like dress up as Batman and go fight crime. So, um, but yeah, it was interesting growing up young and having the arts kind of pushed into my life from an early age, and yeah, it was interesting for sure.
Was that hard for you, knowing that you just kind of wanted to be a kid in some ways, but your dad sees this talent in you and he says, hey, I'm going to help you to become this great actor.
Hmm.
But inside, you're thinking, oh, I just want to be a superhero. I want to go. I know
Yeah.
you mentioned you loved martial arts. You had other
Right.
ideas. So, what did that feel like to still know that there was like that pressure on you to be this great actor?
Um, I think when you're young and you're that age, some people do, and like, bless their hearts that do, the people that just, it was very clear from a young age what they were going to be in this world. Um, I don't think I ever really had quite a concept. I had things that I loved. I loved doing martial arts. I love doing those sorts of things. I loved riding horses and those facets of life. But I think obviously, my dad took the work very seriously, and music was introduced to my life at a young age. I started playing guitar at 5 and acting around the same age, and then at around 8 or 9, I was pulled out of school and pretty much just homeschooled, and that was the mission now. Like, let's homeschool and just focus full time on acting. And I think it's tough as the kid to really understand everything that's going on, because when you're a kid, your parents know best. So your parents are just telling you, my dad was just telling me, this is what we got to do, and that's what we had to do. There was bills to pay, and we didn't, I didn't grow up privileged or with a lot of money or anything. We definitely relied on my work to make sure that bills got paid. My dad worked really hard on side jobs and stuff like that, but he had a kid, and he was single parent. So we made that choice of like, let's go into this. The money came slow, and there was a lot of years of struggle. So the opportunity for, oh well, he doesn't really seem to be taking to it, kind of gets thrown out the window, because now there's a livelihood involved.
Did you feel pressure?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely loads of pressure. Yeah, it's funny because sitting in the chair that I'm sitting in now and looking back, I found a way to find gratitude for a lot of it. Not all of it, but for a lot of it. I think pressure makes diamonds, and I think it was a lot to put on someone at that age, in one dynamic, and there's probably methods that could have gone about it better, but also it does feel good to be someone at my age group, or even when I was 18, and to have a pretty clear idea of career path and career opportunity, so I don't like just sitting down, just like complaining and being, oh, boo-hoo me, it's not fair. I got to be on a bunch of shows and do incredible things that a very small percent of people get to experience. That's definitely not it. That I felt a lot of pressure, definitely. That I, looking back, am grateful for some of the decisions that were made for me. Definitely. I'd say a lot of it was just how it was conducted and went about, that I think, if I could change anything, those are the things I would change.
Mhm. Well, I know you said, that you're grateful for it looking back now, but when you think about those moments, having to cope with all that, do you feel like the pressures of just stardom and all of that at a young age led you to start experimenting as a teenager?
Yeah, I think I grew up, and not really for anyone's fault, but just I think I grew up a little isolated. I didn't like play team sports as a kid. The sports I did do, it was very individual based. Martial arts, like horseback riding, like those were very individual, me and either just myself or me and a horse. So I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't have like the groups and the cliques. And at that age, you mainly make your friends through school, or if you're on a sports team. And I was homeschooled, and I didn't play on a sports team, and didn't have any siblings. So I think when I started getting these shows, and especially when Disney came around, I was put in this position where I was a, 13, 14-year-old kid who now had some form of star power, and I was kind of out in the world. I'm a teenager now, and I'm meeting kids that, for better or for worse, they want to be friends with you because you're doing something pretty cool, and a lot of those kids were were older than me, and they'd grown up, more than I had. I was 14, they were 17, 18, some even older, and some, 16, 17. But yeah, it was weird. I think I just think naturally I was always a bit of a rebellious kid. And instead of, clinging to the, maybe more wholesome crowd of kids that maybe would have been a bit of better influences on me, I liked the street rats and the misfits and broken toys, as I've always liked to call them.
And so, even as that experience is happening and you're in Hollywood, what was the moment that you decided that you were going to start drinking or experiment? What age were you? And were you thinking at that point of it as a coping mechanism with all the pressures, or were you just wanting to fit in?
No, yeah, definitely not. Definitely didn't start the way I'd eventually see how it would go. I think initially it started off as a pretty innocent teenage party experience, which I think is something I also very much try and talk to younger people about. It's just like the urgency to grow up fast needs to go away. Like you're 14, I'm with 17-year-olds. Well, they're all drinking and they're all partying and I'm 14, I'm not 17, and not that 17 is an okay age to be running around, drinking with your friends, but 14 especially is like, I'm just freshly a teenager, and yeah, I'd say it was like a lot of like in the beginning, like drinking on weekends, experimenting, trying this, trying that. Yeah, it definitely came a bit like a dam, a dam with a leak. It was, a water droplet, getting drunk on weekends, trying a little bit of, weed or this or that. And I think eventually you just start taking bigger and bigger. You think you're taking little steps, but the steps are slowly getting bigger. And what you're actually doing is just conditioning your mind to saying yes to more extreme and extreme things. What starts off as like, dude, just take a sip, like try it, turns into like, how many can we shotgun in a single night? And then it's like, wow, I took 34 shots last night. It's like you wake up one day and you're just like, how did I get this low? And I feel like you set these boundaries. And I always try and say this to people. It's like, the distance between smoking something to snorting something to my brain was like, never. You know what I mean? Like, I would never go that far. I remember being like 15 or 14, like smoking weed and being like, this is the furthest I'd ever go, and little did I know, like it's yeah, I think every time you let yourself take those little steps, you condition yourself more and more to taking much more dangerous and much bigger steps.
Mhm. When you think about the steps that, you said it's like a dam, which I think was a great analogy. Like it's all this water, you don't know what's behind the dam. Like it's
Mm,
a slow trickle and then, the floodgates open.
right.
And so when you found yourself at your low, how bad had it gotten? You talked about, even warning kids. It starts out, oh, we're just at a party, have a little sip. Next thing you know, you're doing 34 shots in a night.
Right.
How, when you think about it, how bad did it get for you?
God, I mean, horrible, really. Like I look back some days and sometimes I tell, talk stories with some of my friends and stuff that kind of were around me at that time. And it's appalling that to this day I still hear stories that I have no recollection of. Like I'm
Mhm.
talking days of staying awake at a time, like just indulging in anything that I was offered,
So it
really.
went beyond the weed. I know you said you told yourself
Oh,
weed is it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's where, that was the cutoff. But then it definitely progressed. I did just about everything that you could. I never injected anything, but uh but I took pretty much just about everything that I could. Like even hearing like people that I speak to now that go down the wheel of things that they've experimented with and tried with, like it starts to make me realize sometimes how bad it really was, like what I was consuming on a regular basis. And yeah, it's sad, it's really twisted how something that starts off what you think is so fun is actually not. You're coming up with something that's about to control you the second it has an opportunity to get its claws into you. It'll sink in.
Was it impacting your career at that point, or do you feel like you were able to hide it or manage it so that most people didn't realize how dark it was for you?
Yeah, yeah. What's funny is I think prior to COVID, most people probably couldn't have wouldn't have been able to know that I mean, I wasn't super bad yet either. Like COVID is definitely when I went to like that seventh level, like I think prior to COVID, it would be like, try a little Molly and try a little of this and dabble and get drunk and like, but it was always like the work had to come. And living at home with my dad, and my dad's very like never drank, never done drugs, definitely like not an environment that I could bring home or that he was fine with or cool with or anything like that. So I definitely hit it pretty well in the beginning, and I think the work definitely kept me at bay a little bit, which is why I think that dam really broke when COVID hit, because one, I had moved out, and two, I just had way too much time on my hands to make bad choices.
Was that hard I know you said you hid it from a lot of people and even probably your dad. Was that hard to admit to him when you finally came to the realization that you needed to do something about this?
It was difficult with my dad and and I really I don't hold it against him, because it's difficult. I, you know, can't imagine what it's like to be a parent, especially like my dad that has never really drank and never done drugs or anything like that, and have a kid in that position. You're very far detached. You maybe know people around you that have experienced it, but I think I really struggled connecting with my dad over those years, because how do you kind of look at someone that thinks so much of you and say like, hey, I know you've been through a lot and you've chosen not to drink and do drugs through it, but like I do have this problem, and my dad definitely was I definitely tried to hide it from him for quite as long as possible. But some people in my life had been reaching out to him being like, Isaac's really bad. This is not going anywhere good. Like, we're worried he might die or something bad like that might happen. And my dad tried his best, bless him, but I don't think that he was going to be the person to help me. I don't think I could have. I don't think him and I could see eye to eye on that situation, because you can't relate, and even to this day, like when we do talk about topics based on that, it is very difficult to like have those conversations because it is a bit different. Like when I know someone that's been through it, I can look them eye to eye and I understand, and I know that they understand me, and there's a sense of safety and like knowledge that there is no judgment in the conversation that's being had, because we both understand why what happened, but with him and I, definitely was never quite like that, so these days I'm just grateful to be on good terms with him, and have him in my life, and to be feeling better.
Well, I want to put a pin there because I think this is an opportunity to help parents, you
Hmm.
know, because a lot of parents, will experience this with their children and may not know what to do or what to say or
Yeah.
how to even, like you said, your dad was somebody who's like, no drugs in my house. We're not doing this, and having to say, I want you to understand this. So if there was a message from your story that you would even give to parents who find themselves in the place of, their relationship with their child. What do you wish your dad could have been able to say, or what do you wish other adults would know that they can say to their loved ones?
I would never attempt to know what it's like to be in a parent's shoes going through that. But and got it, I can't imagine. Genuinely, like I feel horrible for what I probably put my dad through with that. But in the same turn, I lived a life of appeasing my father from a very young age and doing things that made him happy and having to, he had a standard of this is your work ethic and this is the quality at which you deliver your work. And so you set these standards very high that, when a kid does start to reach their teens and they do feel insecure and they are hormonal, they get this feeling of trust and communication that seems to start going away because fear of disappointing the people that since you have been born, you have tried to carry a standard of appeasing, and I think my dad and I had really good communication with work. I just don't think it's not his fault. My dad had it really tough when he was a kid and comes from a generation of, you man up, you take it on the chin, and that's life. That sort of open communication and talking about what you're dealing with deep down was just not conversations that we really had, and I think about this as well. Like if I have kids one day, like I think having that open line of communication with your kid, not to let them know that if they make a bad decision, it's okay and no worries, but letting them know that they can feel safe enough to confide in you and have that communication and know that you'll talk to them about their mistake, but you're not going to scrutinize them for it. I can't tell you the amount of kids I know that smoked some weed and their parents had people in the middle of the night, taking them in straitjackets, like, to the woods, go to wilderness camp. And and it ruined people I know. It made them twice as bad. It and it's difficult because, like I said, I do not know what it's like to be the parent in that situation. But I certainly know for my life moving forward, if I do have kids one day, you've got to figure out every other alternative you can before abandoning, because it does feel like abandonment as the kid. I know that for my friends that went through that, it feels like abandonment. They feel alone, and it only makes the situation most of the time much worse, because now you're putting the thing that you love most in this entire world and giving it away to people that have no emotional attachment to this thing at all. And their job is to just watch this person, and you can't trust all the people that are in those. You really, really hope that you can, but there's so many steps I feel like you could take, whether it's going to, trying to put the kid through therapy and talking to them and really working on having a solid basis of trust and communication. And I feel that kids are naturally rebellious. So when we feel that we are okay to do certain things, we feel less inclined to want to do it.
That right there, Isaac, I think is so powerful. I think you said so many powerful things. I keep using that word, but for parents to have that open communication, but then also to know that sometimes pushing too far or going too deep may push the kid more into a rebellion. And I appreciate you sharing that, because I think that will be a light bulb for many parents. And so now I want to kind of take the conversation to you finding your recovery. You're a year and 8 months in,
Yeah.
which congratulations.
Thank you.
You made it.
Made it.
There was a process that got you to saying, I need to get to this place. And I know, before we came on the show, you were talking about your best friend or a friend of yours, and that you guys had been on this journey. He also struggled with addiction. You were on this journey together. So you had that person to talk to, and then he overdosed.
Yeah.
So tell me how having him, first of all, was beneficial to going through this and having someone you could at least talk to, and how that even led you to some extent to finding your own recovery and finally saying, I have to do something about this?
Yeah, he was a I always say I love my broken and misused toys. I love my people that have been through something. I don't really care what walk of life you come from, your financial position. Like my heart bleeds for people that have been through it. Not even just on an addiction front, but physical, emotional abuse, sexual abuse. Like my heart is with those people, and I feel that I can very much connect to people that have experienced deep levels of trauma and hurt. And yeah, he passed away in 2022. He was fentanyl poisoning, unfortunately. And he was someone that he was such a light. He was so similar to me in the essence of, always wanted to make people laugh, always cracking jokes, always, that was one thing that was quite bad about my addiction, was that I hurt people for sure, but it wasn't like, oh, Isaac took drugs and is trying to fight everyone now, or Isaac's typically kept it very funny and very cool and very like, for people in that age group, not many red flags. Like, the kid doesn't have a problem. He's a great time. He's super fun. He's always the light of the room. He's the most fun one in here. And I think that that's a problem as well, because if you don't display signs of completely changing your entire personality and being like, angry or, you know, those sorts of things, you get away with your problems for a lot longer because people don't feel like you have to change. They think that you're very fun, great person. So why would you have a problem with you? Like, oh yeah, he just drinks a little much, but like he's a good guy. So yeah, with one of my closest friends, he was very much like that. Like, we were both deeply traumatized, deeply damaged people, and I think we connected with one another. I think misery does love company to an extent, and we definitely fed each other worse behavior. Um, but I think there is also a sense of kind of what I was saying to you before we started, of knowing that there was someone that I was so close to that was such a good-hearted, kind person, and having those nights of, being under the influence, but having these very deep conversations of like life and death and future and hope and disparity and everything in between, is like, when it was gone, it all very much became real. And, I had some brushes with death, conversations, but I think I accepted a long time ago, my demise. And I think that was a big part of my mental issue, was I didn't fear going over the edge. I didn't fear, departing from the world. But I do fear losing people I love, and losing someone that I love put into perspective that to someone out there, I am someone who someone loves. And I don't have that right to take myself from them, and it sucks, it's hard to really look at yourself and be like, that's how low I got, like that was what I accepted. But now I'm grateful for it, because I do feel like I'm living on borrowed time, and I am so grateful for, the people that are in my life today. And I'm so grateful of the ground that I walk on, and the trees that are in the sky, and the planes that fly over my head. Like, I found a rejuvenated source of love for the world. Um, and I felt a duty to live to my highest potential for all my friends that are not here anymore. Not just from drug related issues, but some died in car crashes, drunk driving accidents and stuff like that. And yeah, it's I think today I walk with a pep in my step, and they are, all right over my shoulder, and in my heart at every moment, walking with me.
Mhm. Wow, I think, when you said that, as you were kind of sharing that, I could feel that there was just so much um, emotion about, experiencing that with your friend, and then knowing that there was somebody who loved you, and the feeling that you felt not wanting anyone to have that. And so I know this led you on the path. I know you did have an arrest after that.
Mm,
And those two things together kind of were the catalyst that you said, I'm going to change my life. But you
yeah.
did it unconventionally, which I think is really interesting. So
Yeah.
if you can walk me through that, because a lot of people say, okay, I'm going to go to rehab, or I'm going to, go to AA, or, something, but
Yeah.
you came up with another idea of how to do this for yourself.
Yeah.
How did you come
Yeah.
to that conclusion? And tell me about that journey for you.
I very much feel that I am my best friend and my worst enemy sometimes, and my stubbornness is linked to a lot of it. I think, like, when I put my mind to something, I'm the best at it, for better or for worse, and I'm going to do it at the highest level that I can, for better or for worse. And when I got arrested, I had been on a 6 month kind of spiral after losing my friend, and, battling these, like, it's such a confliction, because it's like battling the sadness of losing someone and being what you feel is in a similar position, and that you might end up the same. And then the other side of you is like, I can change this, I can turn it around, but this thing, it just has a hold on you, you know? Um, but when I got arrested, I, for the first time, had something that I hadn't had in a long time, which was silence and perspective. I had a nice hard bunk to sit in and really think about where I was, and who I was,
Mm,
and even the circumstances of being arrested. It was so odd. It wasn't your typical, like, got busted and had drugs on it. Like, it was this weird thing of, like, I had a knife that I didn't know was illegal, and I was moving from a house to another house, and, like, I we get pulled over, and the guy that I'm with has a warrant for an unpaid ticket, so they searched the
mhm,
vehicle. Like, just so many things that had to fall into place to put me in that cell, that I knew that that's where I was supposed to be. I was meant to be there that night, and in that cell, I felt, don't really know the word for it, but I felt, my very good friend in there with me,
mm,
and he looked upset in my head. He looked like, to me, what are you doing? Like, you have all the ability in the world to do anything you want, and this is where you choose, even after, and that day, I just, I had a real hard conversation with myself that night, and I said, today, the person who I was when I walked in here is not going to be the same person I was, when I walked out.
mm.
And I didn't really care what I was going to have to go through to stick to that, and yeah, there was hard days. I definitely didn't. I knew, to my philosophy on it, and I wouldn't recommend it for other people, but I knew with my stubborn brain, my philosophy was the problem existed up here, so the solution had to be up here. The problem, if you have a leak, where you find the leak, that's where the problem is, and that's what you have to plug in, that's what you have to fix. And I knew that the problem was in my mind. So the answer was in my mind.
Mm.
And yeah, I cut myself off from the world a little bit and kept myself inside and didn't put pressure of work or friends or family. I just very much like focused on me and who Isaac was and like what did being Isaac mean to me and what did I want to do moving forward and who did I want to be and how did I want to carry myself and what were the people I want to keep around me? What do I love?
Mm.
Like what do I truly love and care about in this world? What makes me happy? And when you've asked yourself these questions, you start to learn a lot about yourself, the very vulnerable, true side of yourself. And I think every day doing that a little bit and a little bit and fighting the urge to say yes to being in environments that I probably shouldn't have been. And I definitely think like, being back around family and friends that, my friends would be like, will knock you out if they see you doing anything stupid like that. Like having those types of people around definitely, couldn't have done it without them, for sure.
So essentially, and I know we had talked about this earlier, you kind of locked yourself away for a year. Like
Just
you took
yeah.
took this time of introspection and you asked yourself all of these questions and you determine when you come out of this that you're going to be different. What did
Yeah.
you, as we get close, because I know you've given us so much, so I'm not going to belabor you too much longer, but
No, you're
you
fine.
came out of that. What did you discover about yourself? What was some of the things that were light bulb moments for you in that alone space with yourself?
I think I discovered that I love people deeply, like on a very, it's such an odd thing to say because I feel like it's like everyone's just like, yeah, well, we love people, but I genuinely I find other people so fascinating, and I love hearing people's stories, and I love seeing their culture and their background and their views and their experiences and how they see the world. And even if I don't agree, like I just love to hear it. I think I found my love for, traveling. I found my love for music. I found the real passion in the things that I create and a purpose to do it, with a motivation to help people and see the world. And yeah, I think I really found a deep gratitude for the simple things in life, like a good night laughing with people and staring at the sunset and, being with my horse, being around family, like listening to the wind hit the trees at night. It's weird, you find these very deep loves for things that you took so much for granted while you were so busy kicking your feet and saying to the world that it's not fair, and that's definitely how I felt, not maybe it wasn't fair.
What do you mean
That's
not fair? Fair that you were going through this? Fair that you lost
yeah,
a friend? I mean,
all of it.
all of it. Mhm.
Fair that this is my life, fair that these are the pressures, fair, unfair that these was the financial situations I was put in, unfair that I lost friends, unfair that I could kick my feet all day. I could find something to complain about and curse the world for, left and right. But I think understanding that just about every single one of us, to some pedigree or another, have something to kick our feet at and complain to the world about. And I am very much a firm believer that, we're dealt a set of, we're dealt a hand when we're born. Some people, those hands look a little bit nicer than they do for others, but you can either complain about how horrible your cards are, or you can put on your brave face and bluff your way through and try and win the game.
Mm.
Play those cards to the best of your ability And I started realizing that feeling bad for myself and being mad at everything and feeling resentful was very tiring, and it had killed a part of my soul. So now I think I just live for like the complete opposite. Like I just like anything that I can experience and do, just 2 nights ago, like literally just sat down with my best friend and my roommate and we just talked all night. And like I felt so happy. Like I felt so complete. We had some steaks, hung out, and it's just great. I found appreciation for just seeing the world. Like nowadays, I would say like I just I want to do projects that I'm passionate about. I want to make music that can hopefully impact people and make people resonate and feel something. And I want to see the world, see as much of it as possible, and meet as many people in this world as possible. And that's really it. Not
No, I
nothing
think
too
that's,
much.
I mean, it's, appreciating, like like you said, we all are dealt this hand of cards, and you knew that you had all of this, but you said, how can I take the beauty and turn that pain into purpose? And I think so many people can learn from that experience. And even I think about one other thing I wanted to ask you about that. Did you find forgiveness in that room? Did you have to find forgiveness for yourself, for others? Was that part of your journey as well to getting to this place? Because I know a lot of times when we have anger or different things that are going on, it can be the root of it can be a hurt or an unforgiveness of ourselves.
Definitely. I think I feel so grateful for my dad in so many different ways, and in some ways that he doesn't even understand because, I look at my dad and he's got the biggest heart in the world, and he loves so hard, but he was so mistreated and taught so wrong how to convey his emotions and how to handle his emotions that it caused him to have very unhealthy tendencies towards dealing with hurt. And, my dad very much was like, can hold a grudge like no one else, can, bring up the past like no one else, and I think for me, forgiveness is the first part. It's accepting and then forgiving, not forgetting, because you shouldn't forget. You should use every experience in your life as a learning lesson to apply to yourself in your own life, whether it's from someone else. My dad knows that he's taught me a lot of lessons, but he's actually taught me even more lessons than he'll ever know. Like, for the man that I want to be, moving forward into my life, traits that I want to have, traits that I don't want to have, things that I have done in the past that, you know, being this way made me feel good. Being that way didn't. And I definitely hurt people. I definitely made so many mistakes and definitely like put myself in positions that hurt my family and hurt friends and hurt people that I didn't even really know, just from just being in that environment. And I think the first thing you have to do is just accept it, let it go, and forgive yourself, forgive anyone involved, and put your best foot forward. And that rear view mirror is always there. So if you find yourself going maybe down a little bit of a different path, like definitely look up at it and remember what's back there, that certain ways that you went about things could be better, and that's why you're on the path that you're on now. So I definitely don't forget, but I do believe in forgiving.
Are you sure you're 22, Isaac? You are like a wise old soul. I feel like I'm talking to someone who is like, 70, who's lived this life and given all this wisdom. But it's amazing, even at 22, that you have so much perspective because of probably that alone time that you took to really understand yourself and all of that. So as we wrap up tonight, we're applauding you, a year and 8 months.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome because every day matters. Every day
Of course. Yeah.
matters. And your testimony that you just shared about what you've been through is going to change somebody's life. But we also want to support you. So tell us
Mhm.
what's next. You talk about music.
Yeah.
We know that's your love and writing
Yeah.
songs. Will we still see you acting? What can we expect?
Yeah, definitely. I think last year was very good for my mental health to get right, figure out where I want to be, to get fit again, like work out again. Work on music, figure out even for acting, like where I was at with it. And yeah, I definitely want to get back into acting. Definitely have a couple cool things that I'm in talks with that we're looking at financing and budgeting for, that I'm really 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 looking forward to. Hopefully we can lock those down and I can do those really cool indie projects and more character driven films, story driven. And then with music, yeah, I'm prepping a single to come out soon. I've really dialed in a sound. It's called Call It Love. This is actually my first
Ooh.
time announcing that, the name
So
of
I
it.
heard it first.
You
What?
heard
Say
it.
it back.
You hear it first.
You said it's Call It Love.
It's called Call It Love. I'll probably have the promos start going for it next month,
And
hopefully.
what's it about?
Um, it's about
I'm
I
putting you on the
think
spot.
yeah, it's a bit difficult because it's on the levels of things. I think it really talks about the culture in relationships nowadays. Kind of about how people mistake the physical connection that they have nowadays, because everything is so hands-on and touchy and feely, that the emotional side goes so out the window. Um, so the course is basically talking about how these two people have this very touchy and physical relationship, and they call it love. Um, and kind of the dynamics of what's wrong with me and what's wrong with her. And I think I often use stories to convey things that are closely related to my life, but also written in a way to which more people could hear and be like, I feel that, so that's Call It Love. And then I have I have hopefully an EP that I can get out by the start of next year. And I'm really, really just focused on creating work that I'm proud of and hopefully other people will really like. And I definitely think I've spent the last year working on myself and on that. And now it's at a point that I'm really, really happy with.
Mhm. Well, we're so happy to see you so happy. You
Thanks.
radiate. It radiates. So
Thanks.
I want to thank you so much, Isaac, for one, being so vulnerable and transparent and sharing your story with us. As I mentioned, it is going to change someone's life just hearing
I
what you
hope so.
shared here tonight. So thank you so much. And thank you everyone who joined us. And that's going to do it for another edition of Addiction Talk.
Of Addiction Talk. Thank